Ice Age.
Hey YouTube, welcome back to the second part of the acrylic frame from Geeetech, the i3 3D printer. Just a couple of things. I've got the base platform pretty much, not installed, but put together. It consists of a smooth rod, which is the 8mm rod, the 10mm threaded rod, and of course the pair of each. And just a few things to note on installing this thing. The instructions, I did get sent the instructions from the company, and they are, let's see if I can pull them up here. They are a lot better than the documentation I did get, but a couple things to note is there are a lot of things missing from the instructions. Parts, for example, when putting together this base unit, it only explained that you needed the smooth rods and then of course the end pieces, which is the acrylic pieces, and basically jumps to the next step, with which these the 10mm threaded rods are already installed. Never once does it mention the threaded rods in the instructions. So it's things like this that make these kind of kits difficult. I have ordered quite a few things from China, and a lot of the manuals are basically translated from Mandarin or whatever, and a lot of broken English and stuff. But this is not the case. There's just actually a lot of information that's just not put in this manual. Things are just missing, like the threaded rods, for instance. As I mentioned to somebody that commented on one of my videos, it's not impossible to put together, as long as you have a little bit of gray matter between your ears. The pictures do help. I originally printed the instruction manual, but had issues with it when it came to the acrylic pieces, especially if you get the black acrylic. When you get black on black parts, you can't really distinct the two parts. Like, for instance, this black plate here. So if you have a tablet or something, or a computer, and you have the brightness up, you can basically zoom in and see things in detail that you can't see on a printed version of the instructions. And these pictures are a huge help. I mean, without the pictures, there would be no way to put this thing together. So the pictures do help, but there are a lot of things. For instance, I'm going to mention a few things that I had issues with, just with this first part, which is the actual base of the unit. One of the things was, well, one of the main things is like the screw sizes. Sometimes they don't fit. The screw that it called for to hold this piece that has the bearings that holds the belt was not long enough to put a nut through. And without a nut, this thing's just going to pull right off. So luckily I had a long machined bolt in my stuff, and I just ran it through. And I'll probably take a Dremel and just cut that off or something. But it's little things like that. There was not one that was long enough for this part to work. So far I've had to use my own bolt for this. But nuts and bolts aside, those are easy to get. The picture that it showed with the 10mm threaded rod, it never told how to put this together. So looking at the picture, I had added, of course, 2 washers here, and then 2 of the nuts here, and then of course the other nuts basically hold the the ends in place. But there was like a black, well, let me see if I can pull it up. Let me see. There we go. It's hard to do this while looking through the phone here. But when you look at it, it looks like there's just like a little black washer. Couldn't really tell what it was. Here we go. Perfect example. Now, there looks like there's a black washer there. So when I was going through the steps, I just left that out and I put everything else that I saw. Again, the instructions never mention anything to do with the 10mm threaded rod, but the pictures had it. So I assembled the pictures. The only thing that the instructions explained what to put together was the smooth 8mm rod. So later on down the line, I get down to, get down further in steps, and I see a picture of finally one of these sideways, and it looks like it has screw holes. And there's no mention of the part number, anything like that. So I searched my parts and found the pieces that look just like it. And sure enough, they have a 10mm hole there. So I had to basically take the whole end piece apart and slide those down in there in the middle. But it's things like that that are going to make people frustrated when putting this thing together, because it's it's tough already as it is. You know, it's trying to concentrate on putting together something, you know, you just spent several $100s on. But it's another thing when you're constantly having to take things apart to add things that you see later in the instructions. So the instructions are, although they are a huge help, they're very poorly written, and hopefully, you know, one of these days they will get it right and fix it. Another thing was little things like this bearing here called for 2 of these little 3D printed spacers, one on each side. It didn't really call for it called for them in the instructions, like, you know, this is what you'll need, but it didn't tell you where they go. But in the picture, it shows them on both sides. When I put them both on there, it basically rendered the bearing useless. The bearing wouldn't budge. It was just too tight. I could have shaved them down, I guess, but instead I just put one spacer in there, and now the bearing runs fine. Excuse me. But things like that, just with the bolt sizes and stuff like that, are going to be a challenge. You know, right now I'm working on the little drive belt for the platform tray, and trying to plow through the instructions for that. But basically, when you look at the instructions, these acrylic pieces are numbered A7, A8, or whatever, and the pictures do show in the order that they need to be in, like which one needs to be on the inside, which one needs to be on the outside. That's one of the pluses. That's a good thing, and that helped a lot. So again, without the pictures, the instructions are pretty much useless. There's very little text instructions on what exactly to do. So a lot of it is common sense. You know, like the whole thing with the bolt here. I knew that bolt wasn't going to work. I knew this bearing wasn't going to turn with those 2 pieces there. So little things like that you'll probably have to make decisions on. What'll make your machine work better. Yeah, I mean, these pieces really threw me for a loop, and I had to go back to the very beginning, you know, taking this apart and slide these on there. So those are the kind of things that are going to frustrate you. But so far, it looks like it's coming along. My big piece of acrylic, I did down there, I did super glue, and it looks like it's holding well. Now the thing is, there was in my previous video, you noticed there were holes in the box, and the box basically dropped several rods, I think 4 rods in all, and I wouldn't have known this. I thought the company probably may have just left them out, but my son found 2 of the rods in my driveway from where the DHL delivery person basically dropped them from the truck to the door. So how she didn't hear them hit the ground, I have no clue, but it's pretty crazy. I did have them look in their warehouses and everything, and they never were able to find them. So I was delayed a couple weeks. I did call the company, the 3D printer store online or whatever, and they did send me the rods that I needed. So now I'm able to put this thing together and work on it, and give you some update videos. But anyways, that's where we're at, and hopefully I can do an overall review towards the end. But I'll keep doing some update videos on the Geeetech acrylic frame, the i3 3D printer. Anyways, until next time, I'll talk to y'all later. Thanks. Okay, just a quick update. Starting to look at this and look at the instructions, and it does look like the heating bed will need soldering to these contacts here. That may be another mistake on my part, considering all the kits that I looked at. I thought this one was solderless, but not a big deal. I'll get this stuff soldered and just move on, I guess. So far, this is the only thing I've seen that requires soldering is the heat bed. But I'll keep you guys updated. Thanks.